This tribute, The Legacy of Leadership, is dedicated to Thomas E.J. DeWitt, who has been at the helm of Lasell College for nearly 2 decades. When Tom came to Lasell in 1988, it was a very different institution. Enrollment was at an all-time low, there was a budget deficit, a tired-looking campus, and by all accounts, the future of Lasell Junior College looked rather grim. Tom also had a little more hair back then. Tom agreed to take the job, but only if the 137-year-old 2-year, single-sex institution would grant baccalaureate degrees, and if he didn't have to do any fundraising. Those were Tom's humble beginnings at Lasell. But tonight, as we pay tribute to Tom, we want to share with you his humble beginnings from the very beginning. On July 30th, 1944, Thomas Erich Joachim de Witt was born in Drangstedt, Germany, in a field hospital outside of Bremerhaven. His parents, Maria Schlegel de Witt and Hans Heinrich, or Heiner de Witt, learned after his premature birth that baby Thomas suffered from rickets and needed to receive extensive physical therapy during his first years before being allowed to learn to walk. This was wartime Germany, and because the apartment house in which they lived had been bombed out, the family moved to Gütersloh, where Tom's parental grandmother and several of his great-aunts lived in an historic house. Tom attended elementary school there through the 2nd grade, which was during the time his brother Volker was born. Heiner and Maria decided to join her brother Erich Schlegel in Canada, where they hoped to build a brighter future for themselves and their young sons. In 1953, the DeWitt family emigrated to Winnipeg, Canada. 10 years later, in 1963, Tom graduated from high school and headed off to the University of Manitoba. An excellent student, Tom took the Canadian B.A. with honors, a 4 rather than normal 3-year degree, and distinguished himself in subjects as varied as mathematics and history. Raised bilingually, he spoke and read German fluently. He also sang tenor solos at German services in the Lutheran church where his father was organist and choirmaster. Who knew then that he would be training for his future singing career? In 1967, Tom was awarded a Woodrow Wilson Fellowship for his 4 years of graduate study in modern European history at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. It was there Tom received a Ph.D. in 1971 with a thesis on the Nazi Party and social welfare, 1919 to 1939. At his graduation, he was elected to Phi Beta Kappa. In the 1970s, Tom taught European history at various universities, which included an adventurous year as an itinerant instructor in the Arctic region of northern Manitoba. In 1973-74, during his stint as visiting assistant professor of history at Lasell College, Tom met an assistant professor of German at the president's house. The two became engaged in December of '74. On May 25, 1975, Tom married Margaret Ellen Ward in Green Lake, Wisconsin. After 2 years of a commuting marriage, and with a dim outlook for jobs in German history in the Boston area, Tom decided to go back to school. As if his other degrees weren't enough, Tom graduated from Boston University with an MBA with high honors in public management in May of 1979. In the meantime, Margaret became a tenured professor at Wellesley. For Tom, it was time to get a real job. In 1979, Tom became the chief financial officer at Regis College in Weston, where he remained for 5 years. During Tom's Regis years, a personal decision transformed Tom and Margaret's life at home. On May 30th, 1983, Margaret and Tom adopted a 2-year-old boy from Tegucigalpa, Honduras, Nelson Ward DeWitt. The following year, Tom left Regis to accept a position as executive vice president at Endicott College. In 1985, on May 30th, Derek Ward de Witt was born in Boston. 4 degrees, a wife, and 2 sons later, Tom was named the 8th president of Lasell Junior College. It was 1988. He claims that he never wanted to be a college president. I guess he certainly fooled us. And now we go back to Tom's humble beginnings at Lasell. Tom's inauguration was held on Friday, September 23, 1988. Chairman of the board, Robert Frito, conducted the investiture of the president. Tom convinced the board to go to a 4-year school in 1989. He quickly balanced the budget, and now his tenure ends after several years of $1 million plus surpluses. The MBA came in handy after all. The college celebrated its sesquicentennial during Tom's tenure, in which there was a 4-day celebration in May of 2001. The festivities ended with the close of Lasell's first multi-million-dollar capital campaign. The president, who didn't want anything to do with fundraising, raised $18.1 million, and during his entire time spent as president, raised over $40 million total. You might ask 2 obvious questions. How did he do it? And what did he do with the money? Tom's success in fundraising can be directly attributed to developing wonderful relationships with a lot of people along the way, like alumni and friends of the college. His track record over the last 2 decades speaks for itself. Of course, an alumni trustee, who shall remain anonymous, was recently quoted saying, "Tom can talk a dog off a meat wagon and take money out of your pocket without you even knowing it. And when it is gone, you are happy about it." Only Tom would recommend going co-ed in the middle of the college's first multi-million-dollar capital campaign. There were fewer donors, but records were set in dollars raised. And only Tom would suggest a $5 million mini-campaign on the heels of a successful $18 million campaign. But 2 years later, the money was in the bank. And so you might ask, what did Tom do with all of this money? He decided to build a few new buildings. If you ask anyone what a significant part of Tom's legacy is, they would say the 24 buildings that he built during his tenure. The most visible building project Tom is responsible for is Lasell Village, the first of its kind living and learning retirement community. Originally called the Glen Ridge Project, it took many years and a long court battle with the city of Newton before it was finally opened in 2000. After a bit of expanding, the village boasts 17 buildings, including Margaret's Cafe and the Thomas E.J. DeWitt Living and Learning Center, which was dedicated in October of 2006. It was the Lasell Neighborhood Association and the threat of an historic district that helped spur the college's aggressive building plan. But just when you thought we were through building, Tom always had another proposal up his sleeve at the next board meeting. In fact, it was quite comical when at an outdoor trustee luncheon, where Tom was promising not to build anymore, a noisy bulldozer happened by and everyone just broke out into uncontrollable laughter. Some may remember the day that the equipment arrived to take down trees for a new parking lot in front of McClelland and Van Winkle. Public safety called to tell Tom that a neighbor had just climbed to the top of the tallest tree and was refusing to come down. If only we had video of Tom trying to talk her out of that tree. He was always so pleasant and kind in dealing with the neighbors. Tom and Margaret walked the campus almost every morning. You might think that Tom's motive was exercise. but actually he was keeping an eye on the progress of each new building project and picking up trash along the way. Now, no one can take away from Tom the fact that he made the changes at Lasell, which resulted in our Renaissance. 2-year to a 4-year, women only to coeducation, undergraduate to graduate degrees. But he did not do it alone. He had his faithful cabinet by his side all the way. If nothing else, we certainly knew how to have a good time. And Tom did it for the students. Whether they were toddlers in the barn, or undergraduate or graduate students, or seniors at Lasell Village, Tom embraced and promoted the concept of lifelong learning every chance he got. Tom lifted the concept of connected learning from a book he was reading after he arrived on campus. It soon became the academic philosophy at Lasell. He would always say that you leave Lasell with a diploma and a resume. In their personal lives, Tom and Margaret embraced Nelson's biological family when his maternal grandmother was able to find him in 1997 with the aid of international agencies, most importantly, a grassroots organization in El Salvador that searches for the disappeared children of their civil war. The Ward/DeWitt family and the Cotto family have visited each other and have become an extended family to both Nelson and Derek. Then came the time Nelson and Derek were looking at colleges. The cabinet was not very happy during this time because after every visit, Tom would return to Lasell and say, "We should do this like they do at Wentworth, and we should do that like they do at McAllister." If you have gotten to know Tom over the years, you know that he is a man of many hats. He looks terrific in hats and doesn't really have to worry about hat hair. For the past several years, Tom DeWitt, baritone extraordinaire, has performed with the new Philharmonia Orchestra at Reunion Weekend. His signature song, which should not surprise you, is My Way. What a fitting song as we prepare to say thank you and farewell to a man who has almost single-handedly put Lasell College on the map. Tom's vision and legacy is now part of the history of this incredible institution. The average college president serves 6 years. Tom has more than tripled this tenure. We have so much to thank him for, and hopefully, for many years to come, this investment and passion in Lasell College will continue to reap benefits for many future generations and graduates. We are not really here to say goodbye, but thank you for all that you have done for Lasell. Even though you won't be occupying the President's office or the President's house, we all still hope to see you around campus.
I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took